One day, my mentor told me, if you're not planning 10 years ahead, you've already planned for failure. That stopped me in my tracks because I, like most people, was living in short cycles. A day, a week, the next paycheck. But great transformations don't thrive in a rush. They're born where patience, strategy, and long-term thinking live. In this video, we'll talk about how to become a person who thinks in terms of decades, not minutes. And at the end, I'll give you a practical tool to start playing the long game. Here's a paradox they don't teach you in school. The biggest cause of poverty isn't a lack of money, it's a lack of vision. Not a shortage of resources, but a shortage of horizon. Think about it, most people operate in short cycles. Until Friday, until the next paycheck, until the next bill. They live as if finances are a series of emergencies, not a field for long-term harvest. They spend everything they earn because there's no tree in their mind that takes 10 years to grow. So what do the wealthy do? They think in decades. They don't ask, what can I buy this month? They ask, what financial fruit do I want to harvest in 10 years? And what seeds do I need to plant today? My mentor, Mr. Schuff, once told me, Jim, a person without a 10-year plan will always work for someone who has one. And I remembered that, because by age 25 I had nothing, no money, no goals, no prospects. While I was thinking about how to make it to the end of the month, others were thinking about how to invest and collect returns over the next decade. We lived in the same world, but in different timelines. And that's what separated poverty from wealth, survival from prosperity. In this video, I'll show you why financial freedom doesn't start with a bigger paycheck. It starts with a bigger thinking horizon. I'll explain how to create a 10-year financial vision, how to think not in transactions but in strategy, and how to turn every dollar into a seed that yields future harvest. But first, let me tell you why short-term thinking keeps most people stuck, and why the long game changes lives forever. I want to start with one question. Have you ever sat down and honestly asked yourself, where is my money really going? Not this week, not this month, but over the next 10 years. Because here's a truth I once painfully realized. Most people work their entire lives and still end up with nothing. Why? Because they don't think in terms of decades. They think in terms of paychecks and discounts. When your thinking is trapped by your next purchase, real wealth stays out of reach. When I was 25, I hit rock bottom, completely. An empty wallet, a pile of debt, and worst of all, no plan. I had no vision, no direction, and so even when I worked 10 hours a day, nothing changed, because all my energy went into surviving, not into strategic growth. And one evening I was sitting in my kitchen, looking at a list of debts, and I suddenly realized, I don't need a new income. I need a new horizon. My mentor, Mr. Schuff, explained it simply. Jim, a financial future doesn't just arrive, it's something you build, day by day, like a farmer prepares a harvest. And that's when I first heard the metaphor that changed my thinking forever. He said, plant a tree, water it, take care of it, and only after years will you get the shade. But those who don't plant trees today, tomorrow will hide from the sun, with no protection. And from that moment, I started to think differently. I began asking myself uncomfortable but honest questions. Where do I want to be in 10 years? How much do I want to earn? What kind of lifestyle do I want to live? And most importantly, who do I need to become to make it happen? Because here's another lesson I learned. Wealth is not a number. It's the result of the person you become. If you become someone who thinks strategically, acts with discipline, and invests for the long term, the money will follow. Now let me speak to you directly. Imagine two versions of yourself in front of you. The first is you living paycheck to paycheck, reacting to supermarket prices, saving $5 when there's something left over. And the second is you thinking, how can I create an asset that will generate profit in 5 to 10 years? You who invest not just in things but in yourself, in skills, in discipline, in knowledge. Which one of them will have the shade in a decade? The difference between rich and poor thinking isn't in the starting point, it's in the time horizon. A poor person asks, how much can I spend this month? A wealthy one asks, how can I multiply this dollar over the next decade? And here's another key difference. Short-term thinking demands instant gratification. Long-term thinking requires patience. And patience, my friends, is one of the most profitable skills in the world. I always said, don't ask for it to be easier, ask to become better. And that advice works at every stage of your financial journey. Think about how a tree grows. At first, almost nothing, just a small sprout, then roots, you don't see them, but they're absolutely essential. and only years later you see the crown. It's the same with finances. First come the years of learning, investing, self-control, only then come the profits, the shade, the fruits. But most people want the opposite. At fruits today, zero effort. That's not how it works. That's why I always said, start with long-term thinking, and your short-term future will change forever. Because as soon as you begin to think in decades, you automatically start building structure. And structure is the opposite of chaos. Money loves structure. It doesn't go to those who flail around, it goes to those who know where they're headed. And the clearer your financial strategy, the more energy you have, the stronger your confidence becomes. But that's not all. I remember the day I first did the math. If I don't change the way I think, then 10 years from now I'll have exactly what I have today. An empty wallet, debt, and disappointment. That wasn't a prophecy, it was simple math. Because as Einstein once said, it's insanity to expect different results while continuing to do the same thing. That's when I first heard a phrase that turned my thinking upside down. People aren't poor because they don't have money. They're poor because they don't have long-term thinking. That was me, working like an ox, but only thinking about tomorrow. I kept asking, how do I make it to the end of the month? Never once did I ask, where will I be in a year? In 5? In 10? Until one day my mentor, Mr. Schoaf, asked me a simple but devastating question. How long are you going to live without a vision? He continued, Jim, if you keep thinking in short cycles, you'll always live by someone else's plan. That's when I realized I didn't just lack a financial plan, I lacked a future version of myself. I hadn't defined who I wanted to become in 10 years. And this is where the real shift happens. As soon as you start thinking in 10-year horizons, every decision changes. You stop buying things just because you feel like it. You start investing because you understand $1 today can be 10 tomorrow if planted wisely. You begin to see each day as a brick in the foundation of your financial freedom, and that shifts both your actions and your emotions. I've seen many people break under the pressure of not seeing immediate results. They start saving, start investing, but after 3 months, they quit because the profit isn't there yet. I always told them, if you plant a tree and stop watering it on day 3, don't blame the seed. Results don't come to the impatient, they come to the consistent. Want an example? I remember a guy from a seminar. After my talk, he came up and said, Mr. Rohn, I've been investing in myself for 3 months, besides reading, learning, even saved up $200, but nothing's changed. I asked you, how long did you live without a plan? He said, about 10 years. I looked at him and said, and you expect 10 years of damage to disappear after 3 months of effort? Friends, let's be honest. We want long game results while thinking in short-term rewards. And that's the biggest trap of poverty. Wealthy people get tired too. They have doubts too. But there's one thing they do consistently. They don't quit. They don't fixate on the short distance. They build the horizon, and that's their strength. I wasn't a financial genius. I was a farm boy from Idaho, but I learned to think differently. I started asking long-term questions. What do I want my children to inherit, but not just financially, but mentally? What should my income look like when I'm 60? What can I build that will keep working without me? Because here's another truth. The wealthy think in terms of assets. The poor think in terms of expenses. And the person who thinks in decades is building an asset, not just spending. Let me remind you, when I hit rock bottom, I had nothing. But I made a decision. And that decision was simple. Either I keep living small and short, or I start playing the long game. And guess what? A few years later, I had more than enough. Not just to take care of myself, but to help others. Not because of luck, but because of consistency and strategic patience. And here's another thought to consider. Think about this. If you save just $5 a day, that's coming $800 in a year. And over 10 years, with the right investments, that could be the seed of a business, an education, or real estate. But if you spend that $5 every day on coffee you don't even need, you're not just losing money, you're losing the muscle of strategic discipline. Discipline, that's what most people lack. Not money, not ideas, but the discipline to hold the horizon. The discipline to act when there's no immediate reward, because real profit isn't in what you earn, it's in who you become in the process. And that's why I always said, if you work only at your job, you'll earn a living. But if you work on yourself, you'll earn a fortune. But my friends, this still isn't the end. I've often wondered what really changes when a person starts thinking in decades. It's not just the strategy, it's not just the finances. The person themselves changes. Long-term thinking doesn't just shape your actions, it transforms your identity. It takes away your short-sightedness and gives you depth. It erases small goals and paints big pictures. You stop asking, what will I get? And start asking, who will I become if I walk this path to the end? Once I was sitting in a small motel after another seminar, exhausted but at peace. I wrote a question in my notebook. What does my ideal day look like 10 years from now? Not today, not tomorrow, 10 years from now. I pictured myself in the morning, waking up not because I have to, but because I want to, doing what I love. Beside me, a family I supported not just financially, but by example. My life has meaning, not just obligations. And I thought, if I want that day, I have to live in a way that makes it inevitable. And here's another truth. The future doesn't arrive as a surprise. It arrives as a result. Every dollar you spend or invest is either a step toward that picture or away from it. And that's when your thinking begins to shift. Like, should I buy that new gadget right now? Or should I invest that money in knowledge that could earn me 10 times more a year from now? I used to choose instant gratification. Now it's only what builds me for the long run. I had a friend, a great salesman. He earned decent money, but was always on the edge. Why? He lived on his full paycheck. And when I told him, start saving 10%, he laughed. He said, I want to live now. 5 years later, we met again. He was in the same place, but I had passive income, savings, and complete freedom of choice. And that wasn't magic, it was horizon. Here's the paradox. When you think long, you start living deeper. When your goal is a decade away, you're in no rush, but you don't stop either. Your steps become intentional, your spending thoughtful, your time sacred. And most importantly, you stop chasing quick wins, because you know success doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who grow. I had a moment when I almost gave up. Things weren't working out, money was tight, and then I opened my notebook, the one with my 10-year goals. I read through them and suddenly felt this crisis, it's just part of the bigger plan. And here's what I want to tell you today. Crises are not the end. They're just a test to see if you're worthy of your 10-year self. My mentor used to say, be careful who you become in the process of chasing your goal, because that's what you'll end up with. And now I understand, the key isn't the money, it's becoming the kind of person who thinks like the architect of their life. Someone who doesn't just react, but designs. Who doesn't just spend, but multiplies. Who doesn't live by accident, but builds with intention. Here's one more image I love. Imagine a ship. Each of your days is a 1-degree turn, seems like nothing, but after a year, you're on a different continent. Same with finances. One right choice a day, and 10 years from now, you'll find yourself on a shore others don't even dream about. So I'll leave you with this thought. Don't let the instant overshadow the important. Because if you truly begin to think long, you won't just change your financial future, you'll change yourself. And when that happens, then money will no longer be a problem. It'll be a consequence. And that's why I always said, financial freedom doesn't live in your wallet, it lives in your mind. Now friends, let's move into the practical. But first, let me ask you a few questions that might make you pause and see yourself 10 years from now. And now, my friend, pause for a moment. Let's take an honest look. Not at who you want to be, but who you are right now. Because change doesn't begin with big slogans. It begins with an honest answer. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. Imagine a scale from 1 to 10. And for each question, answer based on your gut feeling. Quickly. No overthinking, no overanalyzing, just honestly. First question. How clearly do you see your financial life 10 years from now? If your answer is 1, it means you have no idea what your future life looks like. No plan, just drifting. If it's 10, it means you can describe your ideal day 10 years from now in detail. Where you are, who you're with, how much you're earning, how you're living. Second question. How closely do your daily actions align with that vision? A 1 means your actions are random, unplanned, reactive. A 10 means every day is aligned with goals you've set. You have a structure, and it works. Third question, do you think in a 10-year horizon instead of just paycheck to paycheck? A 1 means you're focused only on getting through the week or the month, living in short cycles. A 10 means every financial decision you make is with a 5 or 10-year outcome in mind. Fourth question, how strong is your financial discipline? A 1 means you spend emotionally, impulsively, without control. A 10 means you manage every dollar, you have a budget, you stick to your plan, and you're building investor habits, not consumer habits. Fifth question, how regularly do you invest in yourself? In knowledge, skills, mental growth. A 1 means you don't read, don't learn, don't grow. A 10 means personal growth is your daily habit. You grow because you understand only you can build yourself. Now look at your answers. Don't judge yourself. This isn't a test, it's a mirror. Because if you don't know where you are, you can't know where to go. But here's the good news. Every score can be changed, every single one. One step, one habit, one decision, and you're already not where you were yesterday. After this video, I invite you to come back to these questions. Write them down, reflect on them, and ask yourself, what can I do today to raise each score by just 1 point? Not tomorrow, not Monday, today. And if this video was helpful, hit like, not for me, for yourself. To say, I have started playing the long game. Subscribe if you haven't already, because the upcoming episodes will bring even more tools. And make sure to leave a comment. My 10-year game has begun. Just that. That will be your internal signal. Remember, you're not obligated to stay where you are, but you do owe it to yourself to start moving toward where you're meant to be. So, my friend, we've been through a powerful journey together. We looked beyond just today. We talked about patience in a world where everyone wants everything fast, about vision when most people are staring at their phones instead of the horizon, about a 10-year strategy that doesn't change your life instantly, but changes it forever. Because here's what I've come to understand. Financial freedom isn't a number in the bank. It's a way of thinking. It's the inner peace that comes from knowing you're on the right path. It's the confidence that even if today is tough, tomorrow has meaning. And if you're listening to this now thinking, where do I start? Then start with one simple decision. The decision to think long, not for a day, not for a week, but for a decade. And remember my words, don't ask for life to be easier, ask to become better, because you are the main investment, your mind, your discipline, your vision. That's the soil where the tree of your future will grow. So here's my final challenge to you. Take a piece of paper, write down who you want to be 10 years from now, and then ask yourself, is this worth my discipline today? Because if the answer is yes, then you've already won. You're no longer playing the short game. You're the architect of the long game. Your 10-year version of yourself is already waiting for you. Start moving today, and one day you'll thank yourself for it.